Hey everybody, this is Space Marine Steve, and I am from Play on Tabletop, if you know me from there. I'm also from here at Hyperspace Hobbies, and today we're talking about Dark Angels and how you can rock face with them. I am so excited to be talking about this today because these are tactics that I've been testing and trying over the last few weeks of 10th edition. I know the edition is still very, very fresh for all of us. But there have been some huge tournaments. We just finished WTC. On top of that, we're coming off the back of Tacoma and other major GTs all over the world. Additionally, GW seems to be making a lot of like these fast and like hot fixes. And so that's how we know where they're really, really engaged and they want the game to be as good as possible, which is positive. I think that it still is worth really diving into each of the indexes, even though they won't be around forever, and trying to find what works best, whether that is from the core Space Marine Index or one of the more specific ones. Like today, we're talking about Dark Angels and why I think they're performing fairly well right now. So if you are putting together a Dark Angels army, unlike regular Space Marines, or if you're playing Ultramarines, the only option that you have right now is the Gladius Task Force. But Dark Angels is a different story. You can choose their core Dark Angels detachment, or you can choose to go with the Gladius Task Force. In this particular instance, I actually do think that the Gladius Task Force is the right choice. The combat doctrines are particularly strong, and the relics are a little bit better. Of course, if you want to play with the Dark Angels detachment, go for it. You can, and it will work. However, you won't quite get the same, I think, oomph out of it that you will out of the current Gladius Task Force. Hopefully this all changes as soon as the Codex comes out a little bit later on, but for now, working with what we got. So let's talk about this first combo. It's not specifically Dark Angels, but it did work for a Dark Angels player at the WTC just this last weekend. Very, very successful with it. It also worked for me. I played it in Tacoma, and I just played it against Ian. Ian was very upset about it. It's just over there. I also played it Mid-Table Tactics. You can go and check them out. They're a great battle report channel. They're down in the description below. It is a pack of 6 aggressors with the Apothecary Biologus, and the Apothecary Biologus inside the Gladius Task Force is equipped with the Bolter Discipline. And why this is so good is because the Bolter Discipline rule says that in the Devastator Doctrine, it's not that you just get sustains on 5s and 6s, you get critical hits on both 5s and 6s whenever dice are rolled for that unit. The Apothecary Biologus is dishing out lethal hits, and the Bolter Discipline gives them sustained hits, so they double trigger. And what you can do is with a pack of 6 aggressors, you can actually lay out ludicrous volume that wounds on 5s and 6s and sustains on 5s and 6s. If this unit fires into your Oath target, that unit is probably dead. It worked at Worlds. It worked for me in Tacoma. You can actually even see an example of it on Mid-Table Tactics. It worked for me there too. It is a great unit, a great combination, and I think that it is really strong, particularly strong in Dark Angels. Next, this is another combo pulled straight from the WTC list. I also saw it all over Tacoma. I've tried it myself a couple of times, and it is particularly awesome in Space Marines really of any kind, but we're just going to focus right now on Dark Angels. And so this is a Space Marine combo that will work for anything, although I think that in particular in my Dark Angels list that I'm working on right now, this is fantastic because it's a great way to protect your backline, hold objectives while Terminators run up, or aggressors run up and pressure the midboard and the backboard. And that is a unit of 5 infiltrators and 1 Phobos Librarian. This is maybe one of the best combos in the whole Space Marine Codex. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I think it might be. Basically what happens is the Phobos Librarian gives the infiltrators a lone operative type ability where they can't be shot outside of 12 inches. Also gives them stealth, so they're -1 to be hit if that ever does happen. But combined with the Omni Scramblers on the infiltrators, what it means is that nobody can deep strike to get them. They have to deep strike outside of 12, which means they can't be charged. But it also means because of the Librarian's ability, they can't be shot. So it's very hard to actually interact with that unit, especially if you have things moving up the table, pressuring the midboard, and drawing all of that attention. It means that whatever they're standing on at the back of the table, it's yours. And they also zone out your backfield, making you very, very annoying for armies that love to deep strike. Things like Grey Knights, things like Gene Stealer cults, even Eldar can get weird and tricky sometimes. And so this is a wonderful tool to put in your tool chest. I use it in my Dark Angels army, and I just flippin' love it, and you should try it if you haven't yet. Finally, something that I've been working on is digging out annoying characters. And you'd think that like a faction like Raven Guard would be particularly good at this. However, something that I have been trying is a pack of Terminators with 2 characters in it. And that is a Strike Master and Belial. And so they, like a lieutenant, they can kind of join and you can get 2 characters in that unit. And you don't even need a full pack of Terminators. A smaller pack works just as well. And what happens is there's some awesome layering of abilities here where the Strike Master is dishing out lethal hits to the Terminator squad, and Belial is dishing out critical precision hits. And so whenever they make attacks, those critical hits are auto wounding and then get shuffled right to the characters. And so you can actually volume out characters when you're shooting at them with your Terminators and when you are striking them in combat too. And so what happens is you flip the tables on your opponent and make them really stress about holding onto their characters and making sure that they are truly protected. And what that means is that they're not in line of sight and not in combat, because you cannot hide from Belial. Fantastic little lore line there. Hopefully that makes it into some kind of book. You cannot hide from Belial. You can't. This works actually particularly well because I've tested it on both the Aggressors, which is a great choice for the Bolter Discipline, but you can also put the Bolter Discipline on that Strike Master. And what that means is that in the Devastator Doctrine, they actually critical on 5s and 6s, which means they'll auto wound off the lethals. Same premise as before with the Aggressors, but they'll also go auto precision with Belial. And so by stacking those kinds of rules, lethal, precision, sustained, lethal, and making that work with the Gladius Task Force and that Bolter Discipline enhancement, I call it relics all the time, but they're enhancements. That enhancement is probably the most abusable in the entire index. So far in 10th edition, the Bolter Discipline has always made it in because none of the other relics in the Gladius Task Force or in any of the other ones even come close. And so if you're playing Dark Angels right now and you are maybe a little bit confused on how it wants you to play it or what really your detachment is doing for you, just try squeezing your army into the Gladius Task Force and change things around. That Gladius Task Force is kind of like a catch-all for Space Marines. Everyone's allowed to play it, and so play it. You're allowed to play it, and you can still be Dark Angels. You can still be Dark Angels as long as you just select that your faction is Dark Angels. And so use the best tools that are available to you. Space Marines aren't the greatest faction in the world right now, and that's okay, but you can make the right choices with the tools that have been provided to you. And I think that my Dark Angels forces, all the armies I've tested with so far, have gotten better while being in the Gladius Task Force than me trying to slam that box into this circular hole, right? And that is, sometimes you just shouldn't fight the current, right? And right now, the Gladius Task Force is a very easy option for you to make that gives your army a lot of flexibility. And even if you're playing Dark Angels or Blood Angels or Space Wolves or whatever, you can make that choice and you can kick butt with it. If you really appreciate the Warhammer content that we're cranking out on this channel and on all the other channels that I've talked about, of course, Play on Tabletop makes fantastic battle reports. If you're into the long form stuff, Mid-Table Tactics is also linked down there. Give them a check out. And of course, please like, subscribe, share, comment. All we want to do is talk Warhammer, and we want to talk it with you. So from all of us here at Hyperspace Hobbies, have a great night and crush with those Blood Angels. Do it. I believe in you.